All right. We have like lighter registrations today, so we'll see. That might be my fault because I like actually told people ahead of time. I know that's like silly, but I think I get more folks coming in when it's like a last minute thing. I'm just gonna tweet really quick, actually. Maybe I should just retweet. That'll be faster.
Well, while you do that, Matt, did you start another job?
The joke is that I'm like the king of new jobs here after a long stint. Yeah, the TLDR is I joined at a nice startup, loved them, but right as I joined, a former colleague of mine hit me up and poached me. He is a VP engineering. He's starting. We started at Abby, who does OCR and I see. I have to. I'm still. This is literally intelligent document processing. So basically, if you really had to break it down, scanning documents and then creating workflows to connect them to other systems and automate stuff. So
Very cool.
Short is he was like, I need a developer relations team. You'll be able to like become a manager eventually, which I've never done. We're building it's all greenfield, going to be like a product-led growth direction where traditionally the company's been sales-led. And he's now poached about 10 of us. So it's like working with the old gang. I'm still
That's
like
awesome.
mind blown, honestly, because it happened very quickly. And yeah, so
That's awesome. That's
great end to the year after a tough job hunt. So.
That's an incredible story with, how the market is today. So, congratulations to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, grateful for a great network and yeah.
That is so incredible. I'm so pumped for you. Like to hear that in the sort of like DevRel ecosystem right now, there's just so many people who are struggling to even get interviews. So like, I'm just so happy to hear that. And like, wow, yay. Old coworkers that you enjoy, like there is really nothing better. If I could go back to like one of my OG, like original DevRel teams where we were all like in that prime, oh, I'd like pay money to go do that for free. It was so fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's been my first time like getting into this situation and it's
a good problem to have.
Pinch me kind of moment. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yay.
That's so exciting.
Blessings all around.
Yeah. And Tessa, just really quick, I sent you a Blue Sky DM about it actually the other day. I'm sure you're slammed. Just since I'm here, I wanted to share kudos because since I'm going to be really building this program from scratch, I of course found your resources. I'm going back to, I've got the Mary's business value of DevRel, which I probably won't show now with the blurred camera, but like I'm really going to hit the ground running. So I just wanted to say like appreciate some of the stuff you put out there and running audits like this. So yeah, I'm super pumped to.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a book list for you then, and also I'll get back to your Blue Sky DM. I'm really honestly not on Blue Sky that much, and I think only just because it felt like in the beginning sort of it had the same sentiment of like, oh, we're all like in a new space and it feels great, which is beautiful and amazing, but I'm like, I got stuff to do and it's all the same conversation. So I'm like, okay, I'll come back when we're past this. We're past the goodness of it. And people are starting to engage like they did on Twitter. So I'm eager for that. And I'm starting to see that, but I'm just not on there as much. Hey, welcome. I'm so glad you joined and found it. So there's a little mute thing at the bottom and it looks like you're unmuted, but really you're actually muted. So it's quite tricky. Yeah, there you go. Welcome. Oh, cute. I love that. Like shows for like a second, then disappears.
Yeah.
All right. Should we dive in? Okay. There are some other people registered. We'll see if they come in. You know how that goes with event registrations. So let's get HarperDB up and going. Chris, do you want to start like setting anything up technically as we learn about it and then be like, I've only been able to figure this out and this out because maybe there's gaps, like sort of friction log while we go? What do you think?
I certainly can. Let me get that going.
Yeah, I don't know that there's like a ton, but hopefully we get to sort of the technical end. And then I think, as we're like attempting a setup, what do we experience? But we'll see if we get there. All right, cool. So Matt, back to the book thing. I totally just had an ADHD moment there where I just completely went away from the book conversation. I have a stack of books that I will tell you about. Honestly,
Oh, I
there's
love me some books. I bring it on. That's great.
I really should actually write a blog post about this, and I'll just say this really quick, just because I think the folks on the call would find this valuable too. Is that I have a stack of books for doing DevRel that are not necessarily DevRel books. And so the first one is Rise by Patty Azzarello. That book is about just being a good professional human. And I say this because she actually gives you really good tips on how to show up in your company, provide value, be value, and report value, which in DevRel, I feel like is a very... Okay, let's actually take a step back. It's not DevRel. As developers, we can use all the help we can get in understanding how to be professional humans. Not that we're not professional, but we think in our like nerd troubleshooting, problem solving minds, and we don't necessarily think about what an executive cares about because we don't care about that stuff. So Rise by Patty Azzarello, absolute number one book recommendation for doing any level of leadership, but truly anyone can find value in that book.
So Tessa, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second.
Let's do it.
We've got a number of folks on this call already, and this is being recorded. It'd be fantastic to give an elevator pitch delta between what is Dev versus DevRel.
Oh, yes, that is actually good call out. Okay, cool. Yes, for folks who may not know, developer relations is this industry profession. I think that's probably the best word for it. Also could be considered a technique when you think about sort of growth of a platform or a SaaS product. I think you could also use DevRel techniques for service offerings and things, which you'll get as we get into this in a second here. But essentially, it's the idea that as developers, right, I just made a comment about how we don't know, and we kind of sort of don't care sometimes what executives want, right? And that is because we think like developers. And because we think like developers, we don't like to be sold to, we don't like to be marketed to. We really kind of just don't really want to hang out with other people besides other people like us. I know that sounds selfish, but I validated that sentiment. I'm like, okay, other dev nerds at Commit Your Code last week. And you may have even been in one of those conversations, Alma, when we were talking about it, but it's just like, do you guys like hanging out with like other people, or is it just like the devs? And it's the devs, right? We want to hang out with our peers. We'll give you our firstborn, not literally, but almost figuratively, right? If we know that like you're one of our peers and we can help you because like we just have this like, I don't know, interwoven, right? You're all nodding your head. Like, you get it, right? We want to help each other, but we're like, if you're like some marketing or salesperson, like get away. So DevRel is this idea of engineers engaging with other engineers to drive awareness and adoption of a platform. I think that's what we've most seen it in sort of big tech. But it's just this idea of like peer-to-peer, right? Commit Your Code. I would go to conferences like that, behave in the same way that I just did at this conference, right? I present, deliver a presentation that hopefully developers love, get to have those conversations after the fact, build a little trust. And before you know it, by the time I leave that event, I've made X number of developer relationships. And hopefully a majority of them are going to go check out my employer or at least further interested in me, which may eventually lead them on the path of finding my employer. How'd I do?
I'd say that was pretty good. The TLDR I would add is it's dev for dev to make dev better.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. You should just put that into the universe because the actual DevRel ecosystem is like, what are we and what do we do and what do we call ourselves? And it's that. Hey, Ben and Beth. So Matt, are you, okay, this is like me being like, hey, I know data in my system. Are you working with Beth in
I sure
the future?
Yep.
Yay.
I got her on. We both worked at Ionic together. She's primarily, I don't want to talk over her, but I think she was multitasking. So
totally get it.
when I was a PM, we worked closely together, and she's a UX designer and great product person. And now she's leading our product efforts on this new platform we're building. So we're going to be doing a lot of discovery together and just, all the things. So I of course started sharing some resources, and we are in the very beginning planning stages of what this new product's going to look like. And so things like, anything related to developer experience. And last time was so much fun just to get a different perspective that you just can't, you could read an article or something, but haven't really found a lot of really interesting teardowns like this. So I'm like, oh, you got to join me. So how'd I do, Beth? Is that good?
That was perfect.
Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
Love it. Okay, so I'll come back to the book list because I think it's going to take too long and I don't want to derail this. So I'm going to make myself a note because I'm just going to write this as a blog post. So this is, for those who may have joined, a DevRel book list recommendations. And they're not necessarily DevRel books. And so that's why I want to share them, because they're books that touch on all of the soft skills that can be lacking as engineers trying to do DevRel and approach other engineers in a very business way, which we are not used to.
I would add those soft skills are great, whoever you're talking to, not just DevRel.
Honestly, you are correct, actually, because all of the books that I will recommend are very much, with the exception of 1 to 2 very developer DevRel focused books, are more career and just sort of personal, be better kind of books. So you're very right about that. All right, y'all, I'm so excited to dive into HarperDB. And the reason why I'm excited about this is because they were a client of mine like 4 years ago. And so I wasn't officially in a business or self-employed, but I was doing DevRel. I happened to live in Colorado at the time. I was working at Twitter, helping them roll out the V2 of the Twitter API. Super fun work. Steven, the CEO, happened to find me. He's like, hey, can you come in and help us with DevRel, developers, just generally growth, right? And they were very early stage at that time. And so we just had a number of coaching sessions. Like I was still employed, so I didn't necessarily have a business model. And so we kind of just hung out, with the team for a variety of different sessions to sort of talk through different areas, growing community, how to lean into their brand with the dog, which was really a fun thing of us having a conversation about that. And it's shined true where they've found opportunities and elements. And you'll see it as we go through their developer experience where they bring in Harper, who is actually the CEO's dog. And truly, I will love to hear how you all feel about it. But for me, and I know for other developers who did the audit, which I did with them a few weeks ago now, they like really loved the theme of this kind of idea of like a personal pet. And I think it's that relatability, right? And so we like to relate. So long story short, I just have an admiration for their team, their founding team. And so they have come around and re-engaged with me. And so I was like, hey, why not bring them onto the stream and actually walk through and see what people think. They're actively working on improving their developer experience and how they approach the messaging to developers. And so they're kind of in a sensitive spot of like, oh, we know we have to improve, but these audits are really lucrative for them and they provide that information. And so if you haven't been to one of these audits, like what I just ask of you is to just be really authentic and like how you truly feel. And if that is negative, that's a-okay, right? Because that's something that the team would want to know. And Matt actually just spoke to that, right? He's like, hey, Beth, you should come into these because they're very insightful, because we're being truly honest about how something is resonating or not resonating. And that participation from everyone, I think, is really important to, even if you're not a dev, right? There's a whole nother way of looking at things from the product space or from, really any kind of side of space. So long story short, that's my high level on HarperDB. What I think that their sweet spot is and will be is websites that need like uber performance. And I don't want to share too much before we start going through, because one of the things I like to ask is like, what do you actually think? Like, what do you think they do? What do you think they can do? But just kind of briefly and quickly here is like, they have managed to build something very unique that we don't see in a normal day-to-day. And I think that that's really, really cool, but it makes marketing it really hard because you're trying to go after something that is very net new. So do truly be verbose, because I would love to hear what y'all think and how we can, help HarperDB improve some of this messaging and how they approach developers. Okay, I'm done with my elevator pitch. All right, homepage. We're at the beginning, right? Y'all have had a couple minutes to sort of absorb this as I've spoken about HarperDB. What are we feeling? Next level web performance. I was able to speak to that. What about this paragraph copy? What's this? How's this resonating? And what are you sort of envisioning or thinking that HarperDB can do for you?
It's giving me a single word. This is like serverless because it contains all the like messaging functions, catch, performance at scale. So it's something related to serverless stuff.
Okay, I like that. Anyone else having sort of any general feelings, whether it be sort of like, yeah, I'm kind of onto this, or like I'm into this, or just, I still just don't quite know.
So, going into this page, right? All of us are developers or developer centric. We've all used or been exposed to databases. Several of us have likely been exposed to relational databases, and more recently things like Mongo or things like DynamoDB, so forth. When I read this message, I'm getting, hey, this is more than all of those things. Obviously, that's the words right there on the screen. But as we start to look at it, as anybody's worked in databases, you've had cache issues, you've had, query issues, performance issues. And this tagline tells me this database is performance focused, and it's about being, the best thing you can do for your application.
I love what you just shared. Like, that's very insightful. I shared a little note in the chat. Just for context, for anyone who might be building a business or thinking about this from kind of the business side, MongoDB was like their biggest competitor. And that was very difficult because, as we all know, right, devs love MongoDB. So they've since pivoted, which we'll see as we go through the rest of the website. But I think that's one of the key things. Like, Zama, you and I got to talk a little bit about this, and you were in my session from the conference last week, right? Around like, you're going to have competitors, and competitors aren't bad. Competitors are actually beautiful and great because it means that the ecosystem exists. But it's like, how do you shine differently from someone else who may exist?
This also reminds me of something like Prisma Accelerate, like a cache.
Yep.
The only thing that I was confused with was that like the main heading of the hero section where next level web performance. I think it would be like much better for them to say like next level DB performance or something like that.
Yep. I get what you're saying, but I think completely different words might actually resonate better. Do you think something might resonate with you better than something than that specifically, if you have anything?
Application performance comes to mind.
Yep. I like that. Okay, so what eventually we're going to get to here, I'm going to scroll down the page so we can kind of keep seeing this and just let's keep on this same, vein of thoughts, because I really like this. They are named HarperDB, but they have started to sort of pivot and shift, which if we read into sort of this description, right? So there's so much more than a database. They integrate database, cache, application, and messaging functions into a single hyper-efficient technology, making performance. It just makes me question, like, if you're a database company, what? Because that's not just database, right? Like, what else is inside of this, and what does that mean? And so it actually, for me personally, and I know a bit, so maybe I'm weighted in that, but it draws me towards, whoa, how can you do all these things? Prove it.
Well, to me, it's also a reassuring message, right? Whenever I've dealt with any database, gosh, cache is one of the most annoying things because most databases don't have a deep cache, right? And so you're writing application level caches or API level caches around your database. When you start to look at, holistically, how do you solve all of these problems? And they've really done a inversion of market by baking these things into the database.
That is such a good call out. Okay, so if you've been on any of my events lately, you'll know that I've got a bit of imposter syndrome about actually being a dev nowadays because I've been in dev role leadership for so many years now. But going back to like those days, right? Like that was, I worked at a company where like that was their like claim to fame, right? was like performance, is like being super efficient, various levels of sort of caching and other efficiencies that you weren't normally seeing in that ecosystem. So they were sort of ahead of the times. And like that was the lacking thing, right? Is like you can enable all these layers of caching, but at the end of the day, like you're right, your data should actually be what's being cached, because if things aren't changing, then like boom, boom, boom. It's like fast, right? You know?
Well, even more than that, right? One of the things that I've probably seen the most bugs on in any application I've ever worked on is caching. Nobody
Right.
gets caching right the first time, probably not the second time, right? It takes a bit. And when your database is now the provider for that, it makes your application development go that much faster. This is a DevRel feature. This is dev for dev.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. All right. They updated their website in like the last week or two. So they have this nice little like logo thing. So I'm excited about that. They have some really big brands that they're working with that they can't talk about. And I think that also makes marketing really hard, right? And I know we've all been there. I know like agencies struggle with this because you can't talk about the work you're doing because you're doing it for that company. So I think being able to put some of these in here is really valuable. Like these are obviously names we know, like Verizon, right? But also like Akamai as a developer, like we're going to be like, oh, okay, I know who Akamai is for the most part, maybe. Yeah. Anyone else sort of got anything resonating here as I'm like scrolling down and kind of get to these boxes, I think here.
I'll just add, I like the focus on performance, but agree. Maybe it's because I'm so aware of so many different platforms that seem to have similar claims. I'm still not really sure what they actually do, especially with the HarperDB part of the name, and then now seeing these boxes, the get started gaming. I don't know. The colors, the branding, like that's pretty slick, and the used by, but I don't know. I think there's I don't envy them, because I think it's really hard more and more to stand out when you have similar, Supa base, all these other. They seem so similar to me, at least at a high level.
So I would give a contrasting thought here, right? When I see this portion, I see get started, which of course is an invitation. But then when you look at community, application library, gaming, streaming media, all of these things, it's, hey, this is our page for your industry. And it's the get started here. What I would say is this is somewhat alienating for anybody who's not in those industries.
I do like what you're saying there, because if you're coming in and obviously they don't want to be exclusive, right? I mean, you always want to have your use cases and be really honed in on that target audience and make that tight. But at the same time, if you get a dev from somewhere else, you don't want to be actively pushing them away,
Right. I work in banking. I can see several of the features of HarperDB being beneficial for my day to day. But if I'm quickly skimming the website and I don't see fintech here, well, maybe
Yep.
I'm going to look for something else.
You're not wrong. And honestly, fintech's a beautiful industry for them because of the way their infrastructure is set up, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. So that's a bummer, right? That's a big bummer, actually.
Well, it doesn't mean it's
I
bad.
think,
It's just not inviting to that vertical.
okay, but then let me ask you this. As you're going through this website, and maybe keep this in the back of your mind as we go through the rest, right? I want to know when you decide to walk away. Is this the point at which you walk away because you don't see your use case, because you're like, nah, they're not going to support me, or are you still going to keep giving it another chance? Because that's really the decision here, is like where do you have to make all the experience changes versus not?
So I would call out, and I've got the page up on my screen as well, and I've scrolled down a little bit farther than you. At
Yep.
this point, I don't know anything about Harper. I know some basic promises, but it's at this point that I start to say, okay, I can visualize where this is going. I can see it's compatible with Node and Next, and I can see scale without compromise, efficient and security. I'm starting to get interested, and I know where to click. But it took 2 scrolls under the fold to get there.
Ooh, good call. Oops, someone else is going to say something. Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, I think one more important thing that I think is missing is like it's not showing the benefit of their method, like what exactly is improving. So maybe like instead of industries or other things that they are showing on that feature section, maybe they can show like how how it is with HarperDB and without HarperDB, and show like the benefits, so that that benefit will cover all the industries rather than focusing on few.
So you're saying talk more about the solution of how they solve all the pain points for these, or sort of all these sort of tertiary. Yeah, that's exactly how I do my developer marketing. So you are definitely onto something there for sure. And I agree with you.
Yeah, and also one thing uh, for me, it's very hard to decide what they are doing by using their like landing page. So first I go to their pricing page, like how much time or how much money I have to spend to try out the docs, try out the product. Then I directly go to the documentation and I mostly check the integration part to which
Yeah.
technology I can integrate. And based on that, I decide if I am going to try it or not. Because I previously worked as R&D developer, so I have done a lot of R&D stuff. So it was my criteria. And one example of this is when I tried out Camel by Basecamp, which is like the alternative of Docker Compose, which has traffic already pre-configured in it, but it's written in Ruby. So for me, I always look at the integration first and the documentation.
I do the same exact thing. Sometimes I will like nearly skip over a homepage, honestly. Like I will see what I need to see, but I'm seeing it with like a very quick glance of like, okay, are you going to draw me in with something? Is the features going to draw me in quickly? And then I immediately go to integrations because I want to know if it integrates with what I'm already using. Does anyone else?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So head nods on that. Very common.
because they use very catchy word in the front page, where like it's like good from the marketing and SEO point of view, but it's not that much good where we are for the developers.
Yep. I fully agree. I think that that's often like a marketing sort of like gap, I guess, that folks who are doing developer marketing can fall into, is like that's what they're used to. If they're not used to doing developer marketing, is like SEO, SEO, SEO. How do we write for SEO? But devs don't care about SEO, and so when you write an SEO rich blog post, website marketing, messaging, whatever it might be, you're not actually doing the right thing for the devs.
Yeah, because if for the same page that you share, if we start reading them, we will read something like, hey, performance buzzword, scalability buzzword, embedding buzzword. And
Yeah.
then we will, it's like, then if we take the whole idea, it's like using adjective and the noun a lot, like a lot, instead of normal sentences. So it's very hard.
Yep, fully agree. Okay, so now as we're sort of looking, which is great sentiment. I love that feedback you just shared. The fully integrated applications, kind of as we're looking in this section, right, that I've got screen sharing, are we starting to put the picture together? Like, how is this resonating with folks as they're seeing this now?
For me, my eyes are honing in on example apps, and I want to go there and look at what does the implementation look like.
Yeah, I'm feeling that too.
I would call out they could probably make example apps bigger, right? Grab the eye that much
Yep.
more. They have all of that space underneath it and to the right of it.
Yeah, I mean, actually, when you say it like that, I mean, not that you want it to get too busy, but it also sort of, they've got docs next to it. Could they list like maybe one or two things under docs and then make example apps a little bit bigger? It takes up that left space, and there's like a little side sub menu that's, really short things. Like for me, I'm thinking getting started guide, docs, or maybe take me straight to the getting started guide and the docs potentially.
Well, and even more so, they have room to put, quote unquote top docs, right? They have all of this
True.
room. You could give hot links into hot topics for, you know,
Mm.
if you have 5 different pages that are very commonly navigated to, I might resonate with one of those 5. Matt might resonate with another one of those 5. You might resonate. You see, and so
Yep.
it invites you that much more. Docs is really small and it actually doesn't look clickable.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of tricky. Okay, so as you were saying that, I thought of something. What if we had a developer quote here with like a face that we might know, or like them speaking to a solution? Like I use HarperDB because it solved X, right?
I think most of the time in today's day and age, we're looking at it as how fast were we able to get a feature from zero to production, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
some kind of phrase of, in comparison to Mongo, I was able to get my app together in 2 weeks. Something of that gist, or better performance than Mongo or Dynamo or so forth. Get some metrics, get some statistics, because so far, to the point that was being made before, there's a lot of great words here. There's a lot of good vocabulary words here. They haven't shown us anything yet.
Yep. I think you're right. If there's a dev quote there, and we'll kind of get into sort of their claim to fame in a bit here, and maybe we won't in the homepage, and I'll have to actually tell all of you, and then that's going to be something that's like obviously really clear for us to drive some improvement around, right? Is that they do just make things happen like so freaking fast, and they're able to like from a performance standpoint, but also from a hey, let us just show you what it can possibly do. And I don't think that they are speaking to that enough. And so, long story short, I think as we get through this, we'll start to maybe see that, or hopefully. And if we don't, then it's a major call out for sort of the findings on this. Okay. So, I mean, is there anything here, these boxes, are these really quickly, any feedback or any kind of sentiment that we're feeling about that? I think these are statements that I'm sort of like, okay, yes, efficient and secure, whatever. People make these statements, and I'm more like, give me an example or tell me sort of in different words how you're efficient and secure.
I have one comment, not for the boxer, but for the picture, like where it's written Node.js, Next.js.
Mm-hmm.
And in the docs, they have written like they are using Vue, Israel, Solid also. So if an like Angular or Vue.js developer comes to the website, they have to go to docs to see if it's supporting that framework or not. So either use all the supported framework or you just don't use Next.js only.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. Let's see what we got down here in terms of, oh, I think someone may have just joined us.
It looks like Beth connected again.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, sorry. Flip in
Oh,
the
no.
universe.
All good. All good. Cool. Okay. So now I think we are sort of getting into some messaging here, right? Full stack, single process, application, cache, database, messaging. Oh man, I can't show all these because I'm like getting old and my screen size is small.
Well, but that's actually a really poor design element here. You can't see all of this, and while they've tried to make it look really cool,
Yeah.
things are disappearing from the screen while you might be trying to read them.
That's actually a really valid call out because honestly, as you know, I want to know instantly, what is this going to do for me? Right? I'm like reading super fast. So you are right. And then if I go back, I'm like, now I got to wait for it to come back again. That is a decent call out. It is fun though. Makes me want to sit and
Very
scroll
fun.
up and
It
down.
it has the very old school parallax kind of, eye grabbing. But, when you're showing these features, what does this have in contrast to its competitors? They haven't shown me that. And so, if I've got to do a comparison, where am I getting the entire feature list where I can compare it with a Mongo or a Dynamo or something like that?
Yep. Yep. That's a great call out. I think also it's really hard to read. And I don't know, Beth, if you are watching or just kind of hanging, like no pressure if you're doing stuff, but I think it's hard to read the text that you want them to read.
Yeah, I think there would be an accessibility issue. Kind of related to this, I went to, it's called tunehq.ai. Not to derail this, but on my phone last night, and it had a similar thing, but it actually, instead of like scrolling, it would automatically switch between the carousel, and you didn't have time to even read it. It was like the
Oh,
weird.
that's annoying.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, I think there's going to be an accessibility issue with the gradient on the gradient and the white.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think, generally here, like application cache, database, messaging, we can kind of get and bring all this together, right? Let's see. I'm actually just reading these verbatim now. Lightning fast distributed database delivers orders of magnitude more throughput per second than popular NoSQL alternatives while providing limitless horizontal scale. That's gold, right? Like I feel like this good messaging is like hidden in a box I can barely see.
That should have been at the very top portion as soon as you land on the page. That is their elevator pitch. That is what hooks you and makes you want to read more. And I don't get that from the first point in the scroll.
I agree. Does anyone else have, compelling conviction around that as well? Yeah. Head nods.
I would also call out that under messaging, this is your integration points. What they should do, in my opinion, and I'm not a designer or a marketer, they basically need, when you land here, here's your inputs, here's how fast we can move it, and here's your outputs. And so your outputs being the messaging, how fast we can move it being your database section here, and the cache section, and your inputs being your node or your view or so forth.
I love that, because let's go back to the conversation that we had about straight to integrations. If you were a straight to integrations kind of dev sort of tool evaluator, which I'm guessing many of us are, then that is going to be something that's also going to speak to you, right? When they can visualize it in the way that you just explained it, because then you're seeing those integrations and everything that you're used to working with visually. It's those logos, right? When we can see that the tools we already use is very crystal clearly going to integrate with their tool. Yes, we're in. Welcome.
Well, and each one of those, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Sorry. I was just saying hi. I don't think we'd been on a stream together.
I think each one of those technologies could have a tutorial link or a doc link associated with it for jumping right into, this is how you use this with WebSocket or Kafka, etc.
I love that, because then it takes you, like we were talking about earlier, right? We're all going to need different parts of the docs depending on what type of infrastructure we're coming with, what type of languages we work with, what type of like skill level, right? Experience level. I need docs that are like kind of rudimentary again, because I'm like, okay, wait, I don't know some of this latest technology stuff that I'm still trying to pick back up on, right? So I need the beginning.
Yeah, or maybe like a box type of thing, like Kafka/RabbitMQ with their links. Same for the cache, like Radius or like Access or something else.
I would also add that the simplicity helps the AI tools parse these sites. And so keeping this as simple as possible and straightforward as possible, as the development culture adopts AI, you need simple.
Yeah, you're definitely right, especially with the scrolling and some of that other stuff. Like, when is it going to actually scrape and pick up and be able to like formulate and bring that together? At what time, right? Is this what's that technology at which it's drawing all of that? Maybe it's behind the scenes code, but.
And also one thing, like a lot of animation they are doing for the web, it will not be visible in the mobile. So what's the point of doing a lot of work on the animation part?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get what you're saying. Yep. Okay, I'm going to scroll through the rest of the homepage, I think, pretty quickly, because I'd love for us to get into the docs and sort of getting started and maybe see what it's like to sort of walk through and start to dive into HarperDB. So anyways, just kind of scrolling down to this section, we are seeing some value, or we're seeing some metrics, right? And so whenever we see metrics, we're like, okay, as devs, we're like, what does this metric mean? Let's validate that this is something that's capable. But they are saying massive savings on massive workloads, unified technology, removing the overhead between systems. Okay, this, right? This, I think, and I'm hoping that this kind of starts to come through in the audit here, is this. Their unified technology that removes the overhead between systems, because that's actually their pivot and why they shine now, is they realize that this was such a keen use case and sort of pivoted and shifted into this all needs to kind of exist in one bucket, if that makes sense. Now things are so much more different.
They've got to fix the font on those numbers.
Yeah, they give me like the 90s vibes.
90s word art.
Do you feel, because it's just like, just not visibly, like you just don't care for it?
It contrasts the rest of the page. It feels like it doesn't match the styling. What I would be curious about too is those carrots underneath. Does that take you to, some kind of justification for those statistics, or what does that take you to? How are they getting to those numbers?
Yeah, let me look here. Okay, so it takes you to the use case page. So streaming media has video streaming platform, developing a web browser application, negative 70%. Okay, that's actually really, I try not to be sort of like negative about these, right? But like, I don't understand 70% of what? Then it takes you to better streaming services. So it takes you to the use case page.
I get that they're trying to go for this is 70% faster, but 70% faster than what? 70% faster than who? Is it 70% faster than Netflix? Is it 70% faster than Dynamo? Who is it 70% faster than?
That's valid. That is valid. My guess is going to be having your infrastructure across different systems is what they're comparing to. But again, this, in my opinion, and as we dive in, maybe, we're nearing the end actually, honestly, but we can keep going. But this is like this is what they do, is they remove that overhead between systems. And so in my opinion, and if you haven't seen that yet, Chris, or if anyone else isn't starting to figure that out yet, that's a major problem, because they need to understand that the reason why they are so freaking fast and insanely performant is because they bring things into one place, and you don't have different calls to all the different systems. It's all being done in one place.
With that, they should have a tagline of "Our system is low latency because of its proximity."
Oh, that's so good.
So one thing.
That's good. Yeah, jump in.
If you scroll up to the features section, up more, just click on that. Go below. Scroll down. In the application, just click on that arrow. Yeah.
The application one.
And this whole page looks like a really good web page, the front page. If you scroll down, the message is clear. Yeah. And it's for all this action. To this, for the cats also, it's also very good. So the front page should be like this.
I'm just reading through it.
I agree with you. It definitely is getting a little bit more clear. Even if it's have to see how it actually works in practice, but you go up just a touch. Tessa, the entire stack in a single process is like compelling to me. Like,
yep.
Okay, so that's what you do, or like that's your unique value prop compared to all these other very, 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 very similar services.
Right.
What's interesting to me when we land on this is it feels like someone else designed this page compared to the homepage. It has the same styles, but it isn't quite the same vibe.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like when you go, you sort of have like the same sort of layout feeling. This is definitely different.
That's really pulling at straws, right? They're not a UX company. They're not, building web UIs or anything like that. They're trying to get people to use the database.
No, but I think, but you did call out something. I think that when you're thinking about developer experience generally is like as developers, right, we start to like form a assumption. We're like, okay, cool. Here's what I assume about this. But then as we go through that, we also start to assume assumption about the formatting, right? As we see bullets, what are the bullets telling us in the beginning? What are they telling us in the middle? If we see a theme between bullets across multiple pages or even just a single page, we're going to be like, okay, bullets to me are now these types of content, right? Maybe they're talking about the value adds every time you see a bullet. So now all of a sudden we're looking for all the bulleted lists because we're like, where's all the value adds, right? So I think that, yes, there is something to like, okay, layout, formatting, whatever. But it is sort of one of those things. I'm guessing Beth has a lot of opinions here to dive into. Is just like that stuff matters because we start to form opinions psychologically as we start to walk through your developer experience. And if it turns you off, oops, sorry.
And go to CATs or database or messaging section, they are mentioned like they are using GraphQL a lot of more details, which is like much more clear.
Yeah, like this
Go
one.
to messaging, yeah.
Yep.
Scroll down, and they are keep scrolling, yeah, and they are like giving a lot of details here, which is like hard to find, like MQTT, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So it's like they have done good. They have done good stuff in explaining those in the detail, but they are hidden.
This also is like, oops, sorry.
And a developer is not going to do a scavenger hunt to find out all the details. Yeah,
I do agree. And the request to call, I don't know about you, but that's like the biggest turn off for me. I'm like, I want to go look at it, and at least like get to try something.
This page isn't for the developer. This page is for the manager or somebody doing research. That get started link, where does it take you?
This is taking you to the docs.
Yeah, that's for the developer.
Yeah, you are right, because you're getting into like,
if no developer is going to scroll down to join the revolution here.
Yeah, also like they should keep the Kafka every time queue in the front, not in the bottom.
Yeah,
like
all of that
because
should be
they all are the integration.
Yep.
Love it. Okay.
This stuff right here that you're scrolling through, that should have been very front and center on the main page. Things like this real-time updates and what the real world use cases for this are. All of us can think of sports, weather, breaking news, real-time update. Wow, you support that? That's really fast. Awesome. I'm interested in using this database. That should be front and center.
Yep. I love that call out. Yeah, you're right. Because then they're doing the same thing here. So it's really pointing out because of the way their infrastructure is, they're actually really good on IoT, right? Because then locally, like your low latency based on proximity or whatever that statement was, that was fire. That proves that right there, right? Because then we're talking about the Internet of Things. We're talking about physical. They can be quick where they're at.
Something I'd be curious about is performance based on message size, based on query size, right? IoT is really small queries. And so it's such a low byte count that it's going to move really quickly. What happens when you have a high byte count with HarperDB?
Well, this is valuable because the stack is all in one. It's all stored, like everything's together. So that's why IoT is valuable, because everything is like located on the, I think anyways, maybe I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure everything's located on the hardware, and that's why it's fast.
Well, what I'm getting at is IoT works because of low byte counts, right? If you have your Google Home Hub and you turn on and off a light, the byte count for that message is super small, so it's really quick.
Oh, yeah. I get what you're saying. Yep.
And so, every single one of us who's used a relational database and queried, 1,000 records, that takes a little bit longer than 5, right? And so how are they contrasting with large payloads?
If you go to like the database section, they have written some numbers related to performance. Like go back and go to database.
Like back from the homepage. Oh, I see what you're saying,
Yeah,
from this homepage.
yeah,
Okay,
database. Let's scroll
got
down.
it.
Yeah, more. Yeah, go down. Yeah, here they are mentioning numbers.
This is what I want to see, mind-blowing performance.
That needs to be in that very first, when you land on the website, you see this, because that attracts the eye of the developer. It also attracts the eye of the manager who's viewing this as well, of wow, this has such great throughput.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Because they're buyers and they're like, and just for context, and I think others know this, but I'm just gonna share this as sort of great knowledge, is like, as you're going through this stuff, it's always like, who's your user, who's your buyer, and who are you trying to attract as you're going through that page. And so it's really, really, Chris, you're calling out really great things, right, around thinking about sort of how are we tapping into that buyer and giving them the details they need, but how do we keep the developer intrigued?
Very much so. To give a 10-second spiel, I'm putting two personas on as we're looking through this. I'm looking through it as a decision maker, such as a manager or, some architect somewhere, as well as the engineer who's going to be using this. And so when you think about UX and personas, do the same thing here when evaluating dev tools.
Yep. I love that. These are really great numbers. So I think generally, as we're looking at the website, and I want to dive into the docs, so like, let's go kind of peek at docs and dive in there. But I think TLDR for the website is that, share this tab instead. So I think there are bits and pieces of really good information that started giving us a full picture about HarperDB, but they're not in the places that we maybe need them. Is there any hunch around, do you think, all of you, maybe with both hats, right? If you play or have played both roles, would you have kept starting to search and digging into this, or would you have maybe started to click away at some point and not gotten into the depths at which that we got into in order to get the details we needed?
Think I would have gone to the docs much quicker than where our clicks went, right? I think I would have started poking around here. That developers and administration section attracts my eyes. Deployments tends to worry me less, right? Their deployment should be fairly standardized. I like where they've positioned that on the screen. It's accessible, but not in your face. Whoever structured this is very dev centric.
That's what we need, though. Exactly what we need.
I would say one, I don't know, interesting, not fact, but if I go to a website and I don't understand what it is that they do because of too much jargon or whatever reason, I'll usually just Google it, and then I'll use Google to explain what it is.
Or ChatGPT nowadays, huh?
Or Claude or whatever one.
Claude, yes.
I just started using Claude. He seems nicer than ChatGPT. But anyways, yeah, so that's the idea. Like if I look at a landing page and it's like way too marketing or jargon, I will use a different resource.
Fun fact, we've been studying AIs at the place where I work, and if you are kind to the AI or give very kind, even constructive criticism when it gives you a wrong answer, we've seen that you get better results.
That's crazy. I believe that, because otherwise it's sort of like but when you think about it too, when we give kind results, we're like more patient and we provide more details, where if we're like angry, and I'm talking to my personal Claude experience here, if I'm frustrated, like my prompts back are not as verbose as my kind prompts are. And that's honestly probably the problem. It really is like the prompting technique at which happens when you're frustrated.
Beth, I could go off on a tangent on that. I'll leave that alone.
Wait for the next chat. Yeah.
I was waiting for that. I'm like, okay, where are we going to take this? Okay, so we're in the docs, right? So where is this taking us, right? Like for me, I'm like, okay, getting started guide. There's a lot of stuff happening, obviously, on the left sidebar. And I'm like, okay. I'm sort of doing that scan of like, okay, now I know where it's at when I need to come back to it. Where's this drawing, folks? Also, I want to call out too that they have docs based on their like app versioning, which I thought was something A, I don't see very often, and B is like really, really good. I mean, hopefully your docs aren't changing dramatically from one version to a next, but I think as a developer, I felt like a bit at ease around like them being sort of granular within their documentation. What do others think there?
Well, there is an exception. If you look at the doc for length chain for different version 1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, it's a total mess.
Well, the first version probably wasn't great, but I think to me that like builds trust with, I don't know. For me, it builds trust, but maybe it's because I know so much about developer documentation and that's why it builds trust, at which I'm able to sort of see that evolution of them knowing that they need to improve in various areas and then making those improvements across the docs.
Maybe.
I'd be curious to dive in and see change log between those versions to see, as an engineer who's looking at longevity for a platform, if I don't see a change log, well, let's say I adopt 4.4 and in February they release 4.5. Well, I might have hesitations. There it is.
Yep.
But they should absolutely have changelog in that version drop down so you could jump straight here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I like that call out. I think another thing too, and this is a documentation platform limitation, but something I want to just speak to if someone cares about docs is like, this isn't super helpful because I don't know what happened in each of these releases. Like I need like at least a title and a mini description for each release. So at a high level, I can scan to the release that I need because I don't want to click into 20 different releases before I figure out that like, oh, it was down in whatever Tucker release,
I would want to see it be a very GitHub style release tracker.
Yes. Yep. I agree. Yep. I agree. All right. Okay. What are we feeling? Is there anything that's like really sort of, we've got conviction around diving into? Chris and I are actually coincidentally going to dive into actually doing a tutorial and getting started with HarperDB. But is anyone which part is boring, Arvind? I think I missed that.
Whole section is like it's contain a lot of section.
Oh yeah, the releases.
Yeah, it take a lot of time to just figure out how to get started.
Yep.
Yeah, it becomes an exercise in right click, open in new tab.
Yes. I agree with that. Yep. Okay, good call out. Is there anything that we want to dive into? Does anyone have any I guess how's everyone feeling about HarperDB at this point? We're like almost at the end of the hour. Do we feel like we've gotten a clearer picture? Is it something that we'd be interested in using? Do we maybe have any feedback that we feel like we can leave behind for the dev tool team in what they could approach that's really sort of still resonating with anyone?
I think the biggest one that's bothering me is especially when I look at this page. It says you can run it in the cloud. It also says you can use it as a standalone database by running HarperDB. They haven't talked anything about system requirements for running this. If I'm an on-prem shop, well, can I go run this on my Pentium 2 in the closet? Probably not. And so they haven't given any insight of what you need to run Harper.
That's a really good call out. I
know on-prem is less so today. Go ahead.
No, it's happening a ton in AI and ML, honestly. So I wouldn't necessarily say that.
It gives me the idea like Cloudflare, and I have to check each service manually, which is good, which is not good, because it's giving so much offering.
I think they expect you to either run it in a container or in an EC2. I don't expect them to think that we would want to run it in an on-prem or even a Cloudflare.
Yeah. If they provide like a sandbox environment, that would be awesome.
Okay.
And it looks like they do, right? In the HarperDB cloud, their database as a service offering. It mentions that. And when you go to actually sign up for it, you can actually put in your desired network name. And so I think we just haven't gone deep enough to see some of that. But they also haven't called that out.
Exactly. We don't always get very deep in these. And so I think one of the things, and like, if you're actually doing like a true developer experience audit, obviously you'd go all the way to like implementation. But in this case, we don't, because we're trying to understand, are we still resonating? Do we even want to keep clicking? Like, is this something that is interesting us? And I think it feels like there's a lot more questions than potentially answers.
For the cloud, if you go to the pricing page, you will change your mind to choose the cloud because it's a little bit costly.
Mm.
Let me share that page.
Yeah, they should have a pricing comparison with RDS and Dynamo.
Like, yeah, if you choose the cloud version, I will rethink about choosing the cloud.
You're saying because the pricing is high?
Yes, and I can't decide with smaller criteria that if I'm going to use it later or not.
So I'll contrast you there. Their pricing model is actually it benefits the large shops because it's
Yeah,
not based on usage. It's based on a fixed interval of RAM and storage. And so for say a Google, this is a steal. For say a startup, it could be good, it could be bad, depending on how big your market is.
Yeah, I think if you're a potential, like you're saying, startup dealing with sort of like the platform as a service bills increasing unexpectedly and kind of shifting and weighing and woeing and that being a pain point, I think this alleviates that pain point. You've got some reliability in your cost.
What I'd be curious as well is, and I haven't read all the text on the screen. Can you quickly move from 1 gig to 2 gigs without having to re-provision things and so forth? Because if that's the case and I'm that startup, I'm going to go and do the 1 gig, get started, get my developers going on it and get them, onboarded to do some dev in stage kind of testing. And then as soon as I'm, at scale, oh no, I need 12 gigs or 16 gigs. Let's upgrade. And all of a sudden I can do that inline without losing anything. They haven't
Yep.
said that.
I think that's actually a pretty major decision making insight that you would need to have in order to really pursue. And obviously, like, HarperDB is not catering to self-serve developers who want to spin something up on their own. They're definitely catering to that eventual sales process and likely an enterprise deal or potentially a late stage startup deal. But I do agree with that for sure.
When I get good works, like instead of showing order pricing page, just show a pricing calculator and they can manually calculate. So in which, because now I can clearly see that the pricing is growing constantly. But in that case, they can't predict, so it may help the company.
Yeah, I do think that there's likely, and these insights always come from like really good sales deals, right? Is like, how did that sales deal go? How'd the pricing conversation go? Can we create a calculator that is good for kind of anyone who's coming in, right? Because like, Arvind, you looked at it slightly differently than Chris did. So is there a way to create a calculator that, takes all of those different sort of considerations in mind and allows you to sort of flex and compare so that you can start to understand where they sit?
This could have been a table that contained both pieces of data and had a total price on the right side, and scaffolding table, or quick select what you think and then you see that price. Because what they've accomplished here is it makes you scroll. It also makes you click on cloud storage and then click back on cloud compute, and you're going to do that 3 or 4 times just like we just did.
Yep. I love that insight. Yeah, how can they take up the page space and just spread it out so we're not clicking around?
Yeah, and I have the opinion that a lot of marketing and new experiment done by a developer who use it as a hobby project. Because if a big company is using, they can only publish a case study but a lot of new stuff are developed by the developer who are using it as for fun or for trying something new. But using that, I am not going to use this product to try something new or make anything interesting. So it cuts a lot of new or like a good developer to even stop trying the product. Like if you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
create a YouTube tutorial, you will also think one or twice, should I use it or not?
No, I
Well,
totally agree, but that developer's not their target audience. And so they've intentionally sort of I wouldn't say that they've ruled those people out because you're not, again, not to be exclusive, but it's really crystal clear to me that like you don't just mess around on HarperDB. You've got a legitimate reason and use case. You come over to HarperDB and you want to envision your use case and your situation and how HarperDB can play into that. At least
well,
that's what I think anyways.
and Tessa, fuel for your fire. Go back a page.
All right, back
I
a
want to
page.
humor
Like on
you
the
now. Now click on pricing. I just did this experiment. Where do you land? You land on enterprise. This is geared for
mhm,
enterprise. The
exactly.
default for pricing
Exactly.
is enterprise. They want somebody as a architect in a medium to large company to come and look at this and try this and say, this looks like a neat potential future state project for me. I'm going to go and get some enterprise dollars thrown at it. I can easily throw $1,000 a year at trying this out, and it's virtually no cost to the enterprise, and they get to exercise it. Harper would be in a lot of trouble if they did like a free tier and everybody just kind of came in and used it as a trash can, right? And so they have to charge you. They have to try to do these things. Yes, it is not inviting, but what they should be calling out right here is, hey, you can run this locally. Just like the page we were on before. Hey, you can run Harper on your computer. Hey, you can test it out. You can do your development without paying a dime. They have failed to call that out effectively.
Good call out. Good call out. And I will say too, to kind of speak to that, I mean, at the end of the day, like, we go through these, and so I try not to allude too many information, but I've got my iPad in front of me, so it's like where we landed with their use case, and it's definitely e-commerce, that digital commerce, right, and like extremely high volume e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So one of their clients, like I said, that we can't talk about, is like low, very, very low numbers in the fortune list, right? And so when you think about sort of that level of a client, what are they looking for? They've got thousands of products, thousands of things that are being shuffled through, and that's where they really shine. So for them to even have any sort of insights around anything than other enterprise really is actually like just going to be more of a pain point for them, because they're going to have to, if they come through the sales pipeline, they're going to have to rule them out as a non-qualified lead just due to, their end use case and what their infrastructure is built for. Not that someone couldn't use it for other cases, but yeah.
This is a niche database designed for that mid to large company so that they can have the very best performance. And
Bingo.
they should honestly call that out, because for somebody in a startup, oh my gosh, we just wasted an hour.
That's valid, actually. Yeah, I do think that's valid. I like that call out. Yeah. All
It's
right.
also one more quick thing. It's
No,
also
keep going.
evident in their pricing model.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at this, I would bet you money, and no one will confirm it, they have more people on the 8 to 64 gig RAM here on the enterprise. They probably don't have anybody on that low end of that spectrum. They probably have a lot of folks on the second half of that spectrum.
That's going to be my guess too, based on what I know, but this is proprietary information, so I will
Sure.
not, I'll
No,
leave it at
no,
that, but
I'm not
absolutely.
asking for confirmation there, but the
Exactly.
way their pricing tiers up, look at 64 versus 128 gigs. Yes, that's doubling that value. 64 more gigs of RAM does not cost $15,000 a year. this is targeted for corporations.
Yep. There, at the end of the day, there's a variety of different folks that will actually bring HarperDB into a sales conversation. It can be the cloud architect. It can be, gosh, I don't have all of them written down. There's actually quite a few, right? But what they have noticed has been the biggest value, or sort of the biggest, like, yes, the sales goes well, is that API dev, is those, building those different forms of the integration, connecting those different things together, which I actually thought was really, really interesting. But it makes sense when you start to look at what they're capable of doing and what sort of end results you're looking for when you're bringing all that data together, right? So, yeah.
I would also call out that they're missing an opportunity to contrast themselves with Elasticsearch.
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think? I mean, I'm seeing it and kind of feeling it, but like, you tell me where.
I've implemented Elasticsearch, gosh, 3 or 4 times, and for anybody on this call who's implemented it, that you have your source database with your elements, and you generally have some lookup, and in a lot of cases, Elasticsearch gets used like a cache, right? And so then your end APIs are querying Elasticsearch, and you either have something that is smart caching your data into Elasticsearch, or on a poll, every hour or every day or so forth. Well, Elasticsearch responds really quickly. That's why we use it, as long as it's properly indexed. Well, when you look at that and you look at the overhead, let's say I have MySQL and I have Elasticsearch. Well, I'm going directly to my database for any advanced queries. For anything that's, hey, I loaded my home page, or I loaded a vertical page, say ecommerce per your example, let's say I load the electronics section. Well, I can have all the TVs and computers loaded in Elasticsearch ready to go. Well, when you contrast that with Harper, you don't need both solutions. You just need the one, and you can make hot queries to your database that are returning that data from the cache without having to do anything, crazy, or manage the indexes or so forth. They should absolutely be calling out that they can replace multiple solutions.
Chris, have you used OpenSearch?
I have.
This is like the free alternative to like Elasticsearch. So yeah, a lot of people are also telling like they are trying OpenSearch instead of Elasticsearch.
Absolutely.
In this way,
Go ahead.
I think HarperDB will indirectly compare people it with the OpenSearch, and they will go there maybe.
Yeah, that's viable as well. The big thing is, as you're building any enterprise architecture, you find yourself in a case where the more separations in your architecture you have, the more risk you have, right? If I have MySQL or Mongo, and then I have Elasticsearch or OpenSearch, you have a connection that you have to maintain. You have latency. You have all of these things in between. Oops, somebody didn't put enough memory on my Open or Elasticsearch container. You have things fall over, right? If it's one solution, such as a Harper, it's lower latency that drives better performance. And so that is something that they should be calling out very front and center.
I agree. I very much agree. All right. Well, we went over 15 minutes. That's okay. People stuck with us. So obviously either they're like doing their work and just listening in the background, or they have long forgotten that they were connected, or they're still hanging in there. Does anyone have any parting words or feedback or anything they want to share as we wrap up?
I'll just add, this was another great teardown, and yeah, lots of good insight. It's interesting.
Yay. Good. Awesome. Well, I'm going to do a little I guess it's not selfless because it's for me. So I'm just going to do a really quick plug. And actually, Chris is the first guest on Monday. I'm very excited. I am starting a weekdaily live stream, because I'm not doing it on the weekends, at 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific, and I think it's like 6 p.m. GMT. Starting on Monday, interviewing devs, 30 minutes or less is where we're trying to keep it. It's called 99 Dev Problems. And essentially, we're just talking about problems that developers are facing in their day-to-day lives and how they've overcome them. I think really we'll see where the content leads, but I'm very much guiding that content towards being able to have conversations and talking about things like we talked about here, right? Is breaking down how something might be brought together and the different decisions that can be made and failures that we've seen and things that we've overcome. Because I think that as new devs and as like Tessa, who hasn't been a dev for a number of years, I think that's going to be the best way for me to re-pick up cutting edge technology, different ways and things that have evolved and changed. And I also think it'll be really great for any other developers not in the ecosystems at which we are talking to those devs at, for them to understand sort of other tertiary places to get involved in. And so I'm really excited. Love to have y'all join. That will be on a live stream, so it won't be as interactive as these are. But obviously there's chats and all those things. So I hope to see any of you on that in the future. And that starts on Monday, 10 a.m. Central.
So I'll be there.
Yes, you will be. I hope so, because you're the first one. That'd be pretty sad if you're not there.
Great.
I love it. Love it. Okay. Well, this has been lovely. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your weekend. If I don't see you on another Built for Devs event before the holidays, I hope that if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you are more of just a holiday rest celebrator, I hope that you rest and find all the peace that you need. Bye, y'all.
Yo, take care.
Bye.